With that, I'd like to introduce our second speaker. Skip Pruss is an energy consultant, co-founder of Lakes Energy LLC, a clean energy consultancy, and the co-author of the Council of the Great Lakes Region's report for policy insights, powering forward, accelerating clean energy transition in the Great Lakes region. Skip is the former director of the Michigan Department of Energy, Labor, and Economic Growth and Michigan's chief energy officer, where he was responsible for designing and implementing Michigan's clean energy economy diversification efforts. Skip also served as Governor Jennifer Granholm's special advisor for renewable energy and the environment, and was a member of the U.S. Department of Energy's Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy Advisory Committee. A well-known champion of clean energy, he was joined by his colleague, Doug Jester, in producing this most recent report with very clear policy insights. Thanks for joining us, Skip.
Thank you, Laura. Can you hear me okay?
You can.
Yeah, and first I want to thank OPG and the Council of the Great Lakes Region for supporting this project. It was very interesting to do, and I agree with Heather, absolutely timely. So the paper reports on the current status of the energy transition in the Great Lakes region and the forces impelling that energy transition forward, as well as the capacity and potential of the region to participate in the opportunities that the energy transition is going to create. So the Great Lakes region shares more than a common border. We have a common history. We have social, cultural, and institutional heritage that is shared. And importantly, we have very strong economic connections. The Great Lakes region, the 8 states and the 2 provinces, geographically are the 3rd largest economy in the world. There's the trade in goods and services is about $700 billion annually, and more than half of that takes place in Canada and the US. The region also encompasses the Great Lakes, most extraordinary and the most valuable fresh surface water system in the world. The Great Lakes is directly responsible for billions of dollars in economic activity, but in an age of water scarcity and the prospect of increasing water scarcity in the United States, in future years, more than half of the watersheds in the country are going to experience water stress. And with the anticipated impacts and the present impacts becoming more severe from climate change, many are going to look to the region as a hospitable place, and a place where, comparatively at least, even though we will suffer climate impacts, we will be more resilient than most other places. So we can even perhaps potentially expect a demographic shift. And I think there's some incipient evidence from the COVID pandemic that may be already occurring with workplaces being restructured and people being able to do their business from remote places. But in addition to the Great Lakes, the region is also extraordinarily gifted in institutional assets. We have 1/3 of the top engineering schools in the country, in the world. We have 19 of the top 100 universities in the world, and 15% of the top medical research facilities in the world located in our region. But most important of all, at least for this topic, we are the home of the global auto industry. And for decades, we have been the global leaders in advanced manufacturing, advanced materials, engineering, research and development. We have a unmatched supply chain that serves the auto industry. And as we move towards electrification of transportation and new electric vehicles and autonomous vehicles and advanced mobility, our region is going to have the most at stake to win and the most to lose. So in terms of the forces accelerating the energy transition, there are many. In fact, I track about 20. But among the most important are technology improvements. Wind turbines a decade ago that were being deployed were just over 1 megawatt. Today, we will see the deployment of the GE Heliod X, which is 14 megawatts, a single turbine capable of powering 20,000 households, or excuse me, 12,000 households. In terms of solar panels, the modules are becoming more efficient, more durable, less degradation. These innovations are resulting in cost reductions. In the last decade, the cost of deploying wind energy has been reduced by 70%, solar energy 90%, and the cost of lithium-ion battery technology has been reduced by more than 90% in the last decades. We expect those cost reductions to continue. As a result of that, corporations are adopting, based upon economics, but also other considerations about corporate sustainability, but primarily about economics, renewable energy. Many corporations, hundreds of corporations, in fact, have clean energy standards. Most of the Fortune 500 and Fortune 1000 companies have sustainability standards as well. So corporate and consumer preferences are driving the energy transition as well. And they are also propelling or motivating states and local governments, provinces, and our federal government to adopt clean energy and greenhouse gas reduction goals. The force perhaps that is the most powerful, or should be the most powerful, and is certainly becoming the most powerful, is climate change. Because with climate change, as we all know, we have environmental impacts, we have economic impacts, but we also have social, geopolitical, and national security impacts. So the thing about these forces, and there are others as well, there's water scarcity is another force accelerating the energy transition. The investment preferences of asset managers, the current trends in divestment from fossil fuels, these are all forcing functions that are accelerating the transition. But what is particular about all of these is none of these phenomena are static. They are all accelerating and they are all becoming more powerful. So the paper looks at how we can optimize our participation in the energy transition to benefit the region. And one thing that the studies are showing, and there are a number of very recent studies, is that if we do a better job at interconnecting the regional grid, we will have the benefit of a lot of economic efficiencies. If we do this optimally, we can decarbonize the economy, the regional economy, by 46%. According to a recent study by MIT in the United States, if we optimize the grid, we can reduce ratepayer costs by $100 billion and reduce ratepayer bills by a third. So to do that, we have to have the optimal use of generation resources. So in our region, we have this great resource from Ontario and Quebec in hydropower. Ontario and Quebec have marked advantages over the 8 Great Lakes states in that over 95% of the electricity produced is from zero power resource or zero carbon resources. So if we can convey that power to other places, that will be helpful. In Manitoba, they recently completed a high voltage line to Minnesota, which had the result of enabling Minnesota to overnight essentially reaching their 50% clean energy goals. There are plans in place to send power from Ontario to Pennsylvania and from Quebec to New York City to meet 100% of New York City's power needs. So in addition to that, if optimally integrating the grid means we'll have a greater balancing area. Wind and solar energy, which is being deployed, in great numbers, is variable, and hydropower has the benefit of complementing variable energy. It provides both storage and baseload. It's a very real asset. Like anything else, and it must be said, there are no perfect energy solutions. Hydropower entails and has entailed the flooding of lands that are of concern to First Nations and other citizens, to build new transmission corridors. And there are 37 that exist today between Canada and the United States. That will engender opposition because it disturbs the landscape. Indeed, community acceptance is a barrier and an issue for the deployment of all clean energy, whether it's wind or solar farms, anywhere in Canada or in the country. So there are other barriers as well, and they are the disconnect between the various regions. So what we really need to do is work on harmonizing and interconnecting the regions and doing a much better job, and also harmonizing the permitting and regulatory regimens that exist in the states and provinces. And that is being done. There is the North American Renewable Energy Study that is looking at optimizing the connections between the regions. There is also work between the U.S. National Renewable Energy Laboratory and Natural Resource Canada to really look at permitting and regulatory issues to try to bridge the gaps and to smooth things out. So on one side, we have grid integration regionally. On the other side of the ledger, so to speak, we have localized distributed energy resources, which are going to be our future as well. So first and foremost, we want to accelerate energy efficiency measures in all aspects, from smart houses to the production of steel and cement. In terms of solar and wind deployment, the Energy Information Administration forecast for 2021 in the United States is that 91% of all additional generation capacity added to the grid in the United States will be from solar, wind, and battery storage. We have to really accelerate efforts to enable much broader demand response. Demand response is the system of allowing energy loads to be used or managed by central locations, by our utilities or our grid managers. And in doing that, we can optimize the efficiency of the grid. So in terms of smart homes, heating and cooling in the homes, refrigeration, hot water heaters, in the future, smart thermostats and smart controls will allow, with the consent of the homeowner, to actually regulate that power inputs in very nuanced and subtle ways that overall, in the aggregate, can allow grid managers and utilities to manage the grid, to manage demand with as much flexibility and elasticity as they manage supplies. We're looking to develop more microgrids, which are self-sufficient power systems in discrete geographical areas, particularly suitable for college campuses, hospital complexes, industrial parks, but in the future, even neighborhoods. Coming in the future, perhaps the most important thing of all will be interconnections of vehicles with the grid directly, because more than 90% of the times vehicles sit idle, and if they have a bidirectional relationship with the grid, with all of that energy storage as we electrify transportation, then that can do a lot to optimize the performance of the grid, make it more resilient, and one of the challenges is in moving from central generation of electricity to end users, we're going to instead in the future have literally millions and millions of simultaneous energy inputs and outputs. And that has to be managed and regulated optimally. And in order to do that, we're going to need artificial intelligence, advanced analytics, machine learning, and big data. So that's the future. That is coming, and we're up to it. So as you said, Laura, we need to electrify everything. That's a major point of the paper that we produced. Electrification carries its own benefits. If we substitute motors instead of internal combustion engines, if they're high efficiency motors, we can reduce primary energy demand across the board by 21%. The global potential in terms of reductions in primary energy is 57% if we can electrify all sectors. And by all sectors, we're talking about electricity generation, of course, transportation, buildings, cooling and heating, as well as industrial processes. In doing that, we would mitigate environmental impacts. There are environmental and economic costs that we can now monetize that are associated with energy production, and particularly the use of fossil fuels. And so these externalities, in terms of impacts to the environment, according to the International Monetary Fund, which issues periodic reports on these externalities, they amount globally to over $4.2 trillion per year. So these are very real costs that really aren't accounted for, but they are costs that impair the environment and actually diminish the functionality of environmental services, which we are also now beginning to monetize and appreciate. Electrification of everything also enables robust demand response implementations. If grid managers have control of all sectors and manage all sectors, it's easier to manage demand. And most importantly, it's the most, in fact, the only feasible way of decarbonizing the economy and reducing energy costs. There are challenges. It is energy intensive functions like making cement and steel and chemicals and smelting aluminum uses tremendous amounts of energy and need reliable, steady sources. Transportation, long distance freight transportation, shipping vessels, aviation, all use fossil fuels today, but can use something else in the future, batteries and whatnot. One of the biggest challenges is seasonal storage. While batteries are useful in terms of supporting the grid for 4 hours or even 8 hours, when we have long periods of high energy demand, like in winter, and we're using variable energy resources like wind and solar, there are deficits that are substantial. And so that's why we're looking to new technologies. Heather spoke to SMRs, which, the designs have been certified, at least some of them. The safety have been certified of SMRs. One of the big challenges for SMRs, which could deliver base power to us, is economies of scale. Can these devices be built and deployed in such numbers that we can bring down the cost? Perhaps the most promising technology that can fill our energy needs on a seasonal basis is hydrogen by electrolysis, green hydrogen. As we add tremendous quantities, new resources of wind and solar on the grid, there will be periods where today excess renewable energy is curtailed and wasted. That can be redirected to produce hydrogen, and that hydrogen can be used for long distance transportation, for shipping, and for aviation. So the clean tech opportunity, Lots of studies here. The Canadian Generation Energy Council indicates that by 2022, green tech investment will be $2.2 trillion. Goldman Sachs indicates their estimate by the end of the decade, the investment in clean tech will be $23 trillion and $16 trillion in renewable energy resources being deployed alone. Should mention that Canada is rated 4th in terms of green tech capabilities, clean tech capabilities, and is really the #1 country in the world in terms of the potential for siting new clean tech operations. The clean tech opportunity means jobs, means millions of jobs. Rewiring America's new report indicates that 15 to 20 million jobs will be created in concert with decarbonizing the economy. Stanford, a recent report from Stanford indicates that though if we were able to do that, we would create 28.6 million more jobs than are lost. And there are trade-offs. Jobs will be lost in certain sectors, but we will reduce health impacts, and most importantly, we'll avoid the most catastrophic impacts from climate change. So the report has a whole series of detailed recommendations, but in a nutshell, we need to support all efforts to understand the future power system needs and to accommodate those needs through optimizing grid integration. We need to harmonize the regimen of regulations and permitting requirements across states and provinces. We need to develop more high voltage transmission to have larger balancing areas, a bigger grid, so to speak. We need to electrify transportation, and the real opportunities in the short term are electrifying public transportation, municipal transportation, school districts, as well as medium vehicles like fleets from FedEx or UPS or Staples, utility service vehicles. They can be electrified as well. So we need to do all that. And then we need to do everything we can to become more efficient in industrial processes and buildings. We need more intelligent management systems. We need more digital controls and more advanced technologies. So I direct people to the reports and encourage people to read the report in detail and look at the recommendations. So thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Skip. Appreciate that. So I'm going to ask Alicia to